Germany gave us some of the greatest performance machines ever built. But while everyone talks about the 911s and the BMW 2002s, there were a few cars from the 60s that slipped under the radar. They weren't flashy and they didn't scream performance, but if you lined up next to one at a red light, they might just teach you a lesson. This list isn't about the legends you already know. These are the unknowns, the sleepers, the ones that didn't look the part but still packed a punch. Welcome to 8 unknown German sleeper cars of the 1960s. Number 8. Auto Union 1000 SP Coupe. At first glance, the Auto Union 1000 SP Coupe looked more like a European take on the Ford Thunderbird than something designed for serious driving. Its swooping tail fins, long hood, and two-door Grand Touring body gave it the presence of an American cruiser, complete with styling cues that were rare on German roads at the time. It had flair, elegance, and a silhouette that turned heads without saying a word. People expected it to be soft, slow, and maybe even a little bit showy. But that assumption vanished the moment the engine came to life. Hiding under that grand exterior was something completely different. Instead of a lazy V8 or refined six-cylinder, the 1000 SP was powered by a 981cc two-stroke three-cylinder engine. That setup produced just over 50 horsepower, but numbers don't tell the full story here. The car weighed less than 900 kilograms, and the power delivery was sharp and eager. It didn't hum, it crackled and buzzed like a finely tuned chainsaw. Paired with front-wheel drive and a crisp 4-speed manual, it gave drivers a completely different kind of performance experience. It was not about brute force. It was about momentum, balance, and rhythm. On tight, winding roads, it surprised everything it came across. Drivers who knew how to keep the revs up could turn this stylish coupe into a point-and-shoot rocket. What made the 1000 SP so compelling wasn't just its looks or its oddball drivetrain. It was the contrast. It looked like something that should have been gliding along coastal boulevards, but instead, it carved through back roads with confidence and control. Auto Union, which would eventually evolve into Audi, didn't set out to build a street racer. But by mixing American-inspired styling with an ultra-light body and a rev-happy engine, they accidentally created one of the earliest examples of a European sleeper coupe. It didn't need aggressive marketing or a motorsport pedigree. It just needed the right road and a driver who appreciated something different. And once it had both, the 1000 SP proved that style and performance didn't have to be loud to leave a mark. Now, if the 1000 SP was all about elegance and surprise, the next car took a different approach. It was quieter in design, but quicker than you'd think. And this one didn't just hint at performance, it delivered it with absolute consistency. Number 7. Borgward Isabella TS. In a decade where German roads were increasingly filled with the polished precision of Mercedes-Benz and the rising ambition of BMW, Borgward quietly carved its own lane. And at the center of that effort sat the Isabella TS. At first glance, it was easy to overlook. The design was soft, restrained, and perfectly proper. No hood scoops, no flared arches, no sense of urgency. Just an elegant little coupe or sedan that looked more at home outside a university or museum than anywhere near a racetrack. But the TS was not built to show off. It was built to perform. Under the hood sat a 1.5-liter inline-4 engine, tuned for 75 horsepower. On paper, that figure seems mild, but paper never tells the whole story. The Isabella was a lightweight machine, tipping the scales at under 1,000 kilograms. That meant the power-to-weight ratio was more than respectable. When paired with a crisp 4-speed manual transmission and fully independent suspension, a rare feature for a mid-market car at the time, it transformed into something far more capable than its appearance let on. The TS could cruise effortlessly at Autobahn speeds, and more importantly, it offered balance and composure in the corners that surprised anyone who underestimated it. Drivers who knew how to work the gearbox and keep the revs in the sweet spot could unlock the car's hidden energy. And for many, it felt more engaging than some of the more expensive luxury sedans of the time. But despite its strengths, the Isabella TS never got the chance to rise to stardom. Borgward, a company with big ideas but shaky finances, collapsed in 1961. The TS became a casualty of corporate instability, not poor design. Today, the car is more of a whisper in German automotive history than a headline. You won't see it at major concours events. You won't find it mentioned in books about performance icons. But to those who know, the Isabella TS holds a special place. It was a graceful sedan that had no business being that quick, no intention of showing off, and no problem keeping up with faster company. It was, in every sense, a true sleeper. And just as the Isabella showed how subtlety could hide speed, the next car decided to ditch subtlety entirely. It still came from a small German company, but it traded elegance for raw noise, featherweight design, and an engine that sounded like nothing else on the road. Number 6. DKW SP1000 Roadster. At a glance, the DKW SP1000 Roadster looked like it had just rolled off an Italian design sketch. With its sculpted fenders, smooth profile, and low-slung roadster stance, it gave the impression of something meant for the Riviera. In fact, many people who saw it for the first time assumed it was a coach-built import. The nose resembled an Alfa. The tail had just enough flair to suggest something more expensive. But what lay under the skin told a very different story. This was no exotic V6 or high-strung inline-4. The SP1000 was powered by a 981cc, two-stroke, three-cylinder engine that made just under 60 horsepower. And yet, that number told you almost nothing about how it drove. Because the DKW was incredibly light, barely tipping the scales over 700 kilograms, pair that with front-wheel drive, a close-ratio 4-speed manual gearbox, and a chassis tuned more for agility than comfort, and you had a machine that came alive on tight back roads. It revved high, it buzzed, it popped and crackled like it was angry to be standing still. While it would never outrun a big Mercedes on a straightaway, it could absolutely dance around it once the road got interesting. Driving the SP1000 was never about raw speed. It was about feedback and motion. Every input felt immediate. Every corner begged to be attacked. And the more you pushed it, the more it responded with surprising balance and poise. For a car that looked like a fashion statement, it delivered something far more meaningful. It was precise, it was addicting, and it gave you the kind of grin most modern cars struggle to deliver. Today, the DKW SP1000 Roadster is almost forgotten. It lives in the shadows of better-known sports cars and never made it to the status of a classic icon. But that's what makes it so special. It didn't ask for attention. It didn't need it. It offered a rare combination of elegance and grit, wrapped in a lightweight front-wheel drive layout that no one saw coming. It looked like a cruise night trophy, but behaved like a rally stage regular. Enjoying this so far? Then stick around and hit subscribe. The next few cars are even more underrated and way quicker than they look. And now that we've had our fun with two-stroke energy, it's time to meet a Ford that showed up in a suit but knew how to throw a punch. Number 5. Ford 17M RS P7 Series. This car never screamed for attention. There were no stripes, no bulging fenders, no oversized badging to hint at what it could do. The Ford 17M RS arrived dressed like a company car. It looked like something your neighbor's dad might have driven to work in the late 60s. But beneath the crisp sheet metal and clean chrome, there was something quietly capable. It didn't talk loud, but it always had a little more attitude than it let on. Part of Ford's European P7 series, the 17M RS was the sleeper trim for drivers who wanted just a bit more than what the base model offered. The secret sat under the hood, a 2-liter V6 that produced a bit over 90 horsepower. Now that might not raise eyebrows today, but in a time when compact sedans rarely flirted with performance, it was a game changer. Ford gave the RS version better suspension tuning, tighter steering, and rear-wheel drive, which meant it had proper balance. Paired with a slick manual transmission, it made daily driving feel surprisingly sharp. The power delivery was smooth and confident, and the car handled with an eagerness you wouldn't expect from something that looked this sensible. What made the 17M RS so interesting was how unassuming it remained through all of this. It didn't flash its intentions. It wasn't built for bragging rights. Instead, it became the kind of car that earned its respect one curve at a time. For drivers who understood the value of chassis tuning and feedback, it was a secret worth keeping. And that's exactly what happened. It stayed a secret. Ford didn't plaster it across billboards or parade it at racetracks. It just built a few, sold them quietly, and let the owners find out for themselves what they really had. The 17M RS never reached icon status, and maybe that's why it feels so special now. It represents a different kind of muscle, one that didn't have to be brash or oversized. It was for drivers who wanted a car that could handle a back road without attracting attention in a parking lot. And while Ford would later become known for the Capri and the Escort RS models, the 17M RS helped set that foundation. It was the test run, the warm-up, and in many ways, the proof that even the quiet ones can deliver. Things are about to shift now, because while the 17M kept things cool and confident, the next car on our list was engineered to win, and BMW did everything they could to keep it under wraps. Number 4, BMW 1800 Ti SA. Before there were M cars tearing up racetracks and turbocharged Bavarian legends dominating highways, BMW was quietly setting the stage. And at the center of that early groundwork was a car most people have never heard of, the 1800 Ti SA. Introduced in 1964, it was a homologation special built in extremely limited numbers. BMW wasn't making it for mass appeal. They were building it for racing, and just enough had to be sold to the public to meet the rules. Outside of motorsport circles, it barely registered, and that made it one of the most under-the-radar weapons ever to come out of Munich. The base 1800 was already a strong machine for its class. It came from the Neue Klasse lineup, which was responsible for saving BMW as a company and setting the brand's engineering DNA in motion. The TI version added twin carburetors and a touch more power, but the TI SA went several steps beyond. Under its modest hood sat a twin-carbureted 1.8-liter inline-4, tuned to 130 horsepower. That doesn't sound outrageous today, but the car only weighed around 1,000 kilograms. The result was a sedan that could cruise at over 190 kilometers per hour without breaking a sweat. This was a serious performance sedan, engineered in an era when most four-doors were content just being reliable. Everything under the skin was upgraded. The suspension was stiffened, the brakes were larger, the gear ratios were closer, the steering was sharper, but none of it was obvious from the outside. The Ti SA looked nearly identical to a standard 1800. No flared arches, no body kit, no aggressive stance, just slim steel wheels, a quiet exhaust, and the faintest visual cues that something was different. You could park it beside a regular family sedan and not notice a thing, until it left you behind on a back road or disappeared on the Autobahn. That's what made the 1800 Ti SA so special. It didn't demand attention. It didn't chase status. It wasn't trying to impress onlookers or win style points. It was focused entirely on function. It gave its best to the person behind the wheel and didn't care what anyone else thought. It was a precision tool built for people who knew what to do with it. And while the car never became a showroom superstar, it quietly influenced everything BMW would become in the years that followed. Only about 200 units were ever made. Most went straight into the hands of racers and driving enthusiasts, who took them to events across Europe. That exclusivity only added to its mystique. This was not a car you stumbled upon. It was a car you had to know about, seek out, and understand. And once you did, it gave you a glimpse into the mindset that would eventually lead to the M division, the 2002 Turbo, and a string of iconic performance sedans. The 1800 Ti SA was mature, quiet, and devastatingly effective. It whispered performance instead of shouting it, and that made it one of the purest sleepers Germany ever built. Now, while the Ti SA delivered sharp engineering in a mature package, the next car took a wildly different path. It was tiny, twitchy, and tuned for pure fun. And when you pushed it, it didn't purr, it screamed. Number 3, NSU Prins 1000 TT. If you ever saw one parked, you might laugh. The NSU Prins 1000 TT looked like something a kid would build with leftover Lego bricks. It was small, boxy, upright, the kind of car that looked like it might struggle just to keep up with traffic, let alone race. The proportions felt like they belonged to a go-kart rather than a road car. Short wheelbase, tiny wheels, narrow stance, bubble windows. But behind that unassuming, almost cartoonish appearance